Hey everybody, it's Rusty Nelson, the old Rusty Professor, here doing episode 15 of Talking Watercolor. This is my vlog slash podcast that I'm working with. If you're new to the channel, this is a watercolor training and learning tutorial where I'm showing you everything that I've managed to develop skills within watercolor in the last 8 to 10 years, working primarily with watercolor. It's a lot of fun. I started this channel about 6 months. Actually, I've had an anniversary, a full 6 months on YouTube, creating various tutorials, getting people up and running. People are wanting to learn how to do watercolor for whatever reason. I initially thought this would be a good channel for retirees to develop some things to keep themselves busy in retirement. They're tired of maybe playing golf, sitting around watching TV. So this is a great activity for the retired person or soon to be retired person. Maybe you're in your years approaching. You start to see the light at the end of the tunnel type of situation, and you're maybe a little unsure as to what you want to do. This is what I recommend to you to do to keep yourselves occupied and busy and engaged and having fun. I mean, watercolor is a ton of fun. I am a college professor at the moment. I'm approaching retirement as well, so I've been thinking about that very issue. So it's a relevant topic for me as well, trying to get it out there to you as well. So if you're in your early, you're starting your careers and you're wanting maybe to get back to doing something creative. You might have done it in high school, you might have done it in college, you moved away from it, haven't done it in a while, you want to get back into it. This is the channel, hopefully, for you to come back in and rediscover that love of being creative and finding a medium that is conducive to maybe a busy lifestyle. That's the cool thing about watercolor as well, is that it is ideal. It's fast, it's responsive, it's interpretive, it's just a great way of being creative in a limited time format. So it's always amazed me once I started learning watercolor. And I've been working with a wet media for over 40 years now, but with specifically just watercolor for maybe 10 or 11. I came to appreciate the speed that a really nice piece can be developed with watercolor, as opposed to my technique. I was working with gouache. And it's a wet media. It's an opaque watercolor, and it's a lot of fun as well. But you can it has a lot of flexibility. That's why I think I got into gouache in the first place. It's a very forgiving thing in that you can mix and work with gouache in a very similar manner to an oil or an acrylic. The only difference being that once it's dry, you can reactivate it and push the paint around. So it lends itself to maybe multiple sessions where you don't have to do it all at once, similar to oil and or acrylic. But I also realized as I gained more experience with gouache that my technique was evolving to become more and more watercolor-ish, mainly because I was teaching that technique in my illustration class up at the university. And I was developing skill sets. I was serving as the department chair at the time, and I didn't have a whole lot of time to develop or work creatively because I was doing so much administrative work. So the only time I had to do something creative was in class with my students. So I started developing a whole range of shticks with gouache, which was evolving into watercolor because we were also watching DVD. This is dating my process. DVDs or even VHS tapes of watercolor artists as they were going through some of the fundamentals and the foundation skills that you need to have. And I realized by watching those videos, and it was things I had figured out on my own because I learned a lot of my technique by reading articles and things in like how what was it, Step by Step magazine. I think there was a magazine called How that I used to subscribe to and just used to pour through those things. So everything I learned with my techniques was done the hard way, pre-YouTube. So watching those videos in my illustration class and then evolving my technique to get a demonstration done within an hour and 50 minutes is kind of what led me ultimately into doing watercolor. And I realized finally that, wow, this is really a lot of fun, because I can create some amazing pieces in a very short period of time. And I noticed that also corresponded very closely to the my ability, my patience level of investing 8, 12 to 14 hours into a single piece. It just, for me, the math didn't work anymore. I wanted something that I could get in, do it, and get out, and then move on to something new. And it really mirrors the process that I'm now going through, learning how to create videos and do these tutorials for YouTube and get them out there for everybody. So you're definitely watching if you've watched any of my tutorials, hopefully you've seen some improvements in what I'm doing and what I'm capable of doing just by the sheer act of doing it and practicing. And that hopefully you'll experience that same thing as you get in there and just do it. Don't worry about perfection. Don't worry about the end result. You're going to get in there and make a lot of mistakes. And trust me, that's where the learning happens. Just work to improve each time you sit down and pick up a brush and wet down your watercolors, to get in there and really improve one thing. And that's kind of how I'm breaking down my tutorials in various types of subjects, textures, things that you need to practice to get good at, so that at some point all of these things kind of reach a critical mass and come together for you to develop and create a gorgeous piece of artwork. So go through some of my earlier videos. I really did. I started from scratch. I was working essentially my intro to the watercolor class, where I'm starting with ground zero, non-majors. They may have never picked up. Their football players or business majors. They're people who are taking it as a creative credit on their way towards their degree. And really, I have to bring them up from ground level. The average person is sitting at a third grade creative art knowledge base. That's what they're jumping into the pool from. So I take them from that point and bring them up as fast as I can within a 15-week period. And that's what I've been trying to do. I've been expanding and maybe doing a little more elaborate set of tutorials on YouTube than I'm allowed to do in a 15-week course. So we've moved along at a slower pace, but it's the same content and just giving you guys a little more time to develop those skills. I mean, we have no time constraints, so I might bounce around a little bit from some basic shape tutorial, jumping over into some scenes, focusing on textures, reflections, and just the whole range of skill sets that you'll need to develop and be able to use when the time comes when you're working on a nice tutorial. So I'm going to try to expand my tutorials now. And I mentioned in my last tutorial that I've been working on trying to do a scene, and it's been kicking my butt. And I have it sitting here on my desk right now on my drafting table, ready for another attempt. Mainly because I've been doing so many small, short tutorials within, I've been trying to keep everything within an hour. So I've really been even compressing the time I normally spend on a tutorial or on a watercolor. Normally I'll spend 2 to 3 hours on a fairly good size watercolor. So this is also challenging and getting me outside my comfort zone and really forcing me to get more confident with my skills. I'm going through the same thing you are as beginners and intermediates. I've got a ton of experience, but I still have the same issues and the same things that you're dealing with. Just trying to get in the right mindset, dissect that image, figure out a plan of attack that I'm going to go after, and what's my steps and stages that I want to go through for whatever the image is, whether I'm using a photographic reference I shot, if I found it on Pinterest, if I have gone out and done a sketch plein air, which hopefully I want to do some of those coming up as well, getting out out of the studio and do some things and post them there as well, because that's a whole other skill set as well, going on location and having all the things you need to work with on location. It really boils it down to what's really important. What do you really truly need to be able to create that artwork when you go out and do plein air? So it's there's so many things, so many fun things that will keep you engaged. So again, if you're retired, great, get in there, jump in, dive in. You're going to start creating some cool looking things. If you're just getting started with your career, maybe thinking long term, if you're better at it than I was at that age, that 25 to 45 year range, life is busy. I understand that, but you're maybe thinking long term. When I'm starting to retire, getting close to retiring, maybe you want to retire early and you want to have something to do, and it's a love that you had that you haven't been able to pursue. Man, this is it. Come in here, dive in, do some quick studies and some of these short tutorials, build your skill sets, and man, you'll be able to hit the ground running when the time comes, and you'll be able to invest more time into your creative pursuits. So anyway, I really didn't have any kind of an agenda to visit and talk about today. Let me know how my tutorials are. If you think I'm getting better, I'm getting too repetitive. I am trying some new things, trying to slow down the pace and maybe do some edits between. I know that long back end, stage 3 can be a very long and protracted process to watch all the fussy bits and things coming into it. But that's the state or the stage that all the, you're pulling that whole piece together after the wet on wet stage 1, and you're finding the big shapes and saturating stuff in stage 2. You move into that stage 3 where you're really popping in all the detail. And again, it's not necessarily, it is creating the illusion of a realistic looking scene, but I'm not terribly worried and concerned about it being photorealistic. Even though I may be working with a photo, I'm using that photo as a jumping off point. I'm not being totally tied to the accuracy of what the photograph is telling me. And then plus I'm also doing a little riff. Actually, when I started working wet media, my process was to take if I found a color photograph, I would then go Xerox that photograph and strip out all of the color. So I was working with a black and white photograph and then inventing my own color palette for that picture. So you can see a lot of the early stuff I did doing exactly that, and even working with antique imagery from the family or from the local museums that I have found, bringing those old black and white photographs into a modern sensibility with oversaturated colors and things like that. So I did a lot of that in grad school, and you can see that on my website. If you go to rnelsonarts.com, you can noodle around and find some of those things. I think it's under my illustration tab or gouache tab. Look for homegrown, and you'll see exactly what I did in graduate school. And then you can just definitely go around and see all the various ranges of the visual things that I like doing, be it digital, be it gouache, be it watercolor. And there's a whole range of things that I think, learning how to be creative, you can start applying those desires into a whole range of different mediums. So anyway, that's kind of my talking points today. I've been going at it for about 14 minutes. I don't think I have too many edits to work out any of the... there's one right there, one of my crutch words. Anyway, I will see you next week, vlog 16, and we'll talk some more watercolor. And welcome to the channel. If you're new here, give me a like and a subscribe. And I hope to see you again in next episode and watching some of my tutorials. I'll see you next week.